Are you planning a trip to Grand Teton National Park? And are you looking for Grand Teton National Park tips? If the answer is yes, then you're in the right place. It's easy enough to find videos telling you how to visit Grand Teton National Park, but in this guide, we're going to flip the switch and look at what not to do when you visit there. Planning a Grand Teton National Park trip can be tricky, so I always think it's helpful to know what mistakes first-time visitors to the park commonly make so that you can avoid making the same mistakes when you go there. I made a few myself, I'm willing to admit, and I wish that I had known these tips for visiting Grand Teton National Park before I went there for the first time. Hi, I'm James Ian, and I've written numerous guides and published several itineraries for Grand Teton National Park after my first visit there, obviously, not before. And in today's episode, I'm going to share with you 7 common mistakes that people often make when they visit Grand Teton, and most importantly, how to avoid them. If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe right now. And if you're watching or listening somewhere else, follow my podcast to get the episodes as they come out. Be sure to stay to the end. I'll be sharing my number 1 mistake that lots of people make. I know it's a little strange for this particular episode, you may think, but I think you'll understand when we get there. Let's take a look right now.
Welcome to National Parks Collecting with James Ian, the national park expert. He's here to help you have the best national parks trips ever. Get tips, discover hidden gems, and learn all you need to know. This is your path to collecting national parks experiences, memories, and maybe even a stamp or two.
So, what are the 7 biggest mistakes that I see people make when they plan their trip to Grand Teton National Park? The first mistake that people often make when visiting Grand Teton is starting the days late. Grand Teton National Park gets about 3 million visitors a year, and that number is continuing to rise. Because the park is not super big and the snow-free season is relatively short, the park can get very crowded in the summer. There are no timed entries into the park, unlike some other parks that help control the crowds, so people can enter whenever they want without a reservation, which takes away one level of planning complication, but the result is that the parking lots usually fill up very early in the day, the trails can get crowded in the summer, and boat rentals sell out, especially in the peak summer months. This means that if you sleep in and you get to the park later in the day, you may find yourself spending a chunk of your day roaming around the parking lots waiting for someone to leave. There are only 1,500 parking spots in the park, which may seem like a lot, but keep in mind that on some days there are 20,000 visitors. The 2 largest parking lots are the Jenny Lake parking lot and the Coulter Bay main parking lot. They each hold around 400 spots. That's not a lot when you consider how many people are in the park. If you head to one of these lots before 8 a.m., you've got a pretty good chance of getting a parking spot. But after that, you may need to wait. The most popular hiking trail in the park is Cascade Canyon Trail. It's also my favorite. And this trail starts at Jenny Lake, actually on the other side of the lake. You can hike around the lake or you can get the boat. But because of the popularity of this hike and many other activities around Jenny Lake, it's a really beautiful spot and I highly recommend it. The parking lot fills up super fast, and so does the trail. So make sure that you're giving yourself time to get on the trail before it's too crowded. And if you're trying to rent a boat while you're at the park, then getting there is also really essential. Jackson Lake is the best place to rent canoes and kayaks in the summer because there's more options there, but they're on a first-come, first-served basis. So there's a couple of really good reasons to get to the park early, but the main one is just to be able to have a little time at the start of the day where you can have the park almost to yourself. It's really nice. Another mistake that people often make in Grand Teton National Park is only driving part of the scenic loop drive or driving the loop all at one time. So there's kind of 2 parts to this mistake. It's a bit of a cheat. It's really 2 mistakes, but they're both connected to the loop drive. The loop drive is a 42-mile loop around the park that takes in many of the park's highlights. You can start in one of 3 different locations. If you're heading from Jackson, you'll hit it at the Moose Junction. If you're coming from the north, there's the Jackson Lake Junction, and if you're coming from the east, you'll enter at Moran Junction. Once you've entered the park, let the beauty begin. The loop consists of two major roads in the park, which are the US Highway 191, which is the outer road on the loop, and Teton Park Road, which is the inner road. So you'll be on these two roads for most of the loop. There's just little parts where you're not. The whole drive takes about 4 hours if you're going to do the drive straight through and see all of the stops along the way. But we'll talk about why I don't recommend that. It's best to do the drive if you do it all in once, early in the morning or in the evening. Driving in the middle of the day maybe is a third mistake related to the drive. Morning or late afternoon will give you the best chance to see wildlife. And there's also less traffic on the road, and you'll have a better chance of getting parking at the spots along the way. So one mistake that people make when starting a drive is not doing the entire loop. They get to one of the major spots like Jenny Lake or one of the many incredible viewpoints, and they think that they've seen enough. But completing the loop really gives you so many different perspectives on the park. The views are different in different places. There are lots of different stops that have different highlights. There's some history at the Menor Ferry Historical District and at Cunningham Cabin. And there's lots of different views and perspectives of the mountains at Jenny Lake, Signal Mountain, Oxbow Bend, Snake River Overlook, Schwabacher Landing, Mormon Row, another historical area. Also, several of those places are really great places to see wildlife, particularly early in the morning and the late afternoon. So I recommend, if you're going to do it, make sure that you do the full loop. But this brings me to my other mistake number 2.5, I guess, which is driving the whole loop in one go. I don't recommend it. If you only have a half a day and you want to see all of the major highlights in the park, then yes, that's what you should do. It's definitely better than not driving the loop at all or only driving part of the loop. In fact, I have a video that describes the loop drive in one big loop, and you can watch it here. However, if you have a little more time, I don't recommend doing that. You'll want to get out and enjoy the lakes. You want to do some hikes maybe if you can. You'll want to stop and have a meal or two, visit the visitor centers, attend a ranger program. You want to be at the main viewpoints at the best time of the day for lighting. The views are very different depending on the time of the day that you go because of the position of the sun. The first time I went there, I wasted kind of the whole afternoon by visiting several viewpoints in the mid-afternoon, and the views were not that great. They were kind of backlit and washed out. And then I went back to the same viewpoints at sunrise, and they were spectacular, like just amazing. So timing is really important. And there's other things that you can do in the afternoon rather than sort of just seeing these kind of washed out backlit views. So if you want to avoid the most crowded places at the most crowded times, I recommend planning very carefully. And I actually discuss this more in my mistake number 6 a little later in this episode, so stay tuned for that. Number 3. Related to this, but a separate point, another mistake that people often make when planning a trip to Grand Teton National Park is not spending enough time in the park. If you're looking for an adventure, then Grand Teton National Park is for you. There are over 250 miles of hiking trails. If you're even more adventurous, there's over 800 climbing routes with 200 peaks. Not really my thing, but there's also tons of wildlife, and there's just lots of other easier things to do than climbing a mountain. But if that's your thing, do that. That's great. Many people just give Grand Teton one day, but I think this is a big mistake. I recommend staying at least 3 days, even more, depending on what you're planning on doing. Of course, if one day's all you have, it's still worth it. You'll have an amazing time. Definitely go there. But there's just so much to see and do in Grand Teton National Park that you'll be glad that you added some extra days to your trip if you can manage it. With 1 day in the park, you'll have less chance of seeing wildlife like moose, black and brown bears, elk, foxes, wolves. However, if you only have a day and you want to see that, well, then a good option is actually to take a tour, like a kind of a safari tour. And the guides often know the best places to see these amazing animals. So if you have a limited amount of time, that's definitely something to consider. And there's a link in the show notes below to a tour if you're interested. Another thing to keep in mind if you don't stay here very long is all of the activities that you'll be missing out on. This national park truly does have it all, or at least most. Some of the activities you can do in the park include mountain biking or just flat biking. There is a biking trail. Fly fishing in the Snake River. You can go on a river float down the river. There's kayaking in Jenny Lake and swimming in String Lake. If you want some more ideas on what to do, you can watch my video on the 10 best things to do in Grand Teton National Park. And there's some more detailed ideas there for you. You'll also be missing out with not much time on being able to see the entirety of the park. There are a lot of more kind of secret locations around the park that not a lot of people know about, like Avalanche Canyon, Amphitheater Lake, and Hidden Falls, all worth seeing. So make sure that when you're booking your Grand Teton trip, that you book a couple of extra days if you can make it. You won't regret it. Before we look at my other mistakes to avoid in Grand Teton National Park, if you're watching this on my @National Parks Collecting YouTube channel and you haven't already, please like and subscribe below. It does help. So, what's another mistake? Something I really don't recommend doing in Grand Teton is skipping all of the views. If you're anything like me, then you'll agree that there is nothing better than a good viewpoint. Believe it or not, though, lots of people skip some of the best viewpoints in the park, mostly because they just don't know where to find them. For the best views in the park, there's a couple of things that you need to take account of. First is what time of the day you'll be getting to the viewpoints. Mentioned before, in the morning you can pretty much go anywhere and you'll get a magnificent view of the mountains, glowing orange, illuminated by the rising sun. It's my favorite time of the day in the park. Sunset is the next best time because the clouds around the mountains will glow pink and purple and orange and make the Tetons look incredible. But the middle of the day and middle of the afternoon are really not that great times to see the mountains looking the best. The next thing you want to consider is the weather. If there's a storm, then the mountains will be covered in the clouds and you won't be able to see them, of course. Not that great. Now, there's a lot of viewpoints, and as I mentioned earlier, there is a video that I did on the best viewpoints in Grand Teton National Park. Check it out. You'll see all of my 10 top highlights there. We're over halfway through already. Next up is mistake number 5. So another mistake that people make in Grand Teton is only visiting in the summer. A lot of people think that summer is the only time that you should visit Grand Teton National Park. However, it couldn't be further from the truth. What is true is that summer does open the park up completely. This is when everything is open and that it's most accessible. And for many people, that's enough. I get that. But winter is one of my favorite times to go to this national park because there are fewer people, a lot fewer people. The views are just as amazing, very different, covered in the snow. And it's a great time of year to see some of the local wildlife, particularly the elk, because they come down. You don't really see them in the summer, they're up high, but they come down to the National Elk Refuge area and you can see thousands of them. It's super cool. Plus, the park is open, not the inner park road, but the outer park road. The inner park road is groomed for winter activities like snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, and snow hiking. Highly recommend that. Awesome. Out of the 3 million people who visit the park each year, about 1/12 of those come during winter. So you'll have the park almost to yourself. The wildlife I mentioned before, very active. Not all of them. The bears, not so much. In the winter, you'll see elk, but also good chances of seeing moose, bison, wolves, swans even. I have a guide actually on my website, parkscollecting.com, with a winter guide to Grand Teton, and there's a link in the show notes below. There are also many tours that can take you around the park if you don't want to deal with winter driving. They do go to the National Elk Refuge and the National Bighorn Sheep Center on a tour. Kind of cool. There's a link in the show notes below to book a winter tour. The other side of this is that coming in the winter does have disadvantages. The Teton Park Road, the inner road, is closed to regular vehicular traffic, which means that you won't be able to complete the full scenic loop. But there are still plenty of amazing spots that you can hit along Highway 191. So you don't need to worry about not being able to see many of the views in the park. You could also go there in early May or late October to escape the crowds while still being able to access the Teton Park Road. Not winter, but a lot fewer crowds. And that can be really nice too, obviously. So we are getting close to the end. We're up to mistake number 6. A really common mistake that I see people make all the time is not having a detailed plan. A flexible one as well, of course. With Grand Teton being so popular and with so many things to do, having a plan is really important. It's very easy to find yourself missing out on a boat because it's booked, spending ages driving around the parking lots because they're full, getting annoyed because the trailers are so crowded, seeing the mountains as a hazy silhouette because you're at the viewpoints at the wrong time of day. In the summer especially, you need to plan your activities around the busy times and busy places in the park. So when planning your trip, you need to coordinate different times between the attractions. You need to know how long each hike or each viewpoint will optimally take. You need to know which areas are the most popular and when you need to get there to avoid having to wait for the parking, for example. And you need to be able to coordinate all of those things together throughout the day. It can be intimidating or overwhelming. In fact, the number one thing that people ask me about is how to put everything together, how to coordinate all of this into an actual itinerary that makes sense. And that's why I created super detailed itineraries for Grand Teton National Park. And I have options for 1, 2, and 3 days. You can click on the links in the notes below and it will take you to a page that explains more. But let's take a quick walkthrough right now. They start with a map and an overview, plus some practical information about how to get there, how to get around, what the key areas of the park are, etc. And then there's a detailed hour-by-hour breakdown. They include all the information that you need to adjust them if needed. There are options throughout the day for people with different interests and different energy levels. So, for example, there might be an option for a long hike and at exactly the same time, another option for the same part of the park that involves no or very little hiking for people who prefer that. They include driving directions and maps, hiking trail descriptions and maps, tips, timings, warnings of things to watch out for and pay attention to, etc. They also include bonus extras like a dining guide, an accommodations guide, and even a wildlife checklist, which is kind of fun. They'll help take away the overwhelm. They're an instant plug and play, but they also give you all the information that you need in one spot. So many people use them to create their own itineraries based on all of the information that is right there at hand. Just click on the links in the show notes below. Now, as promised, what's the worst mistake that you can make when visiting Grand Teton National Park? The worst mistake, I think, to make when planning a trip to Grand Teton National Park is not visiting Yellowstone National Park on the same trip. I know this is a little bit odd, considering this episode is about Grand Teton, but these two parks are so close that it would be a real shame to go all the way and not see Yellowstone too. And I met someone who did this. They just didn't realize that Yellowstone was so close, and they went all the way to Grand Teton and didn't go to Yellowstone. It's such a shame. From the northernmost entrance of Grand Teton to the southernmost entrance of Yellowstone is just 40 miles. It's about an hour. Getting between the parks is super easy. You just follow Highway US 191 North and you'll be there in no time at all. Yellowstone is the first national park in the entire world, let alone the United States. It's one of the most famous national parks in the country. And not getting there when it's so close is just a real shame. Yellowstone's most famous attractions, it has many, are Old Faithful, Geyser, Grand Prismatic Spring, this incredible colored spring. Other colorful springs like the Morning Glory Pool, there's Yellowstone Falls, there's wildlife in Lamar Valley and Hayden Valley, and these are just some of the things, and they're all easily accessible by car. There are also lots of hikes that you can do. There's a nice hike to Fairy Falls, there's Artist Point hike, barely a hike, more a short stroll, there's the Lamar Valley Trail. There's all sorts of trails from very short, very easy walks on boardwalks to really long treks. Some of the other things to do are see the wildlife. There's tons of bison there. There's good chance of seeing wolves, trumpet swans, all sorts of things. Very cool. So don't miss the opportunity to visit this magical national park. It's just a very short drive from Grand Teton National Park. If you have a week for your trip, a really great combination is 3 days in Grand Teton and 4 days in Yellowstone. Amazing trip. If you want help planning your trip, check the links in the description box below. There's a bunch of planning and booking resources that you can use to plan and book your trip. And keep watching my videos to get even more help so that you can have the best national parks vacation ever. And if you want to get notified about the next episode, subscribe and click below.